Welcome to your daily dose of hope. I'm Phyllis Nichols, and I'm glad you're here. We hear things all the time about loving yourself, loving ourselves. And I'll tell you, sometimes when I hear it, depending on the context, it kind of makes me roll my eyes. Like, of course, I like myself. Of course, I want to take care of myself. But I don't know, sometimes just getting my head around like what loving myself means, I got to admit, it's not always the easiest thing. And I feel like sometimes loving ourselves gets packaged as something sort of like temporary, like giving yourself a treat or taking a break, and there's nothing wrong with those things, of course. But I don't think that's what real self love is. I think it goes a lot deeper than things like that. So I started thinking about, what does self-love look like or feel like? And a couple of things that came to mind are, it's how you talk to yourself, especially when things don't go as planned, right? We all have like a running monologue in our head some days. And, how we talk to ourselves, I think is an indication of how we consider ourselves. It's also about how we respond when we're disappointed or things don't go well, or maybe when we feel like we've not done something the way we should have. Do we give ourselves the same understanding we might give to a friend or a family member? When we're excessively hard on ourselves, I feel like the expectation is that somehow we need to be perfect or meet some really weird arbitrary standard. But what if loving yourself isn't any of that? What if loving yourself is just about being honest and kind to yourself, understanding that, we have patterns and beliefs in our lives that impact how we show up and the way that things land for us. Loving yourself is acknowledging your strengths, but also acknowledging where you struggle or where you're not always doing the best or things that are hard for you. Honestly, I don't know anybody in the world who doesn't have some things in their life that they aren't great at, right? Things that they have to work at harder, or maybe even things that they try to avoid because they're so difficult. That's a human experience. So I think loving ourselves could just mean showing up for our life the way that we are instead of trying to put a different face or a different feeling on it. I think loving ourselves sometimes means making hard choices, like setting boundaries, letting go of things that don't align with us anymore. Not because those things aren't easy, but because it's what we need to do for ourselves, right? Real self love isn't about some performative action. I think it's like steady, consistent steps. It's the quiet way that we can check in with ourselves regularly, pay attention to what we're saying, pay attention to how things are feeling and how they're landing, and trust ourselves. There's a lot of hope when you can have that kind of relationship with yourself. This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.